Very simple ideas that are espoused as cliches and just seem very, very obvious can become so important if you actually pay attention to them. That is the basic thesis of David Foster Wallace's timeless commencement speech that everybody in the world should watch, called This is Water. One of these principles that I've heard before, seems so obvious, and even could make me cringe sometimes, is the concept of turning toward. I didn't think too much about turning toward until I... Toward, that's a weird word. Toward. I'm going to say turning to, but you get me. There's a book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work that I read last year. And one of the principles is turn toward people instead of away from them. So many of us, our coping mechanism for dealing with conflict or just negative emotions that we have is to turn away. And that has certainly been mine. It is something that was ingrained in me from childhood, that was the safest, easiest way to get through any sort of adversity, is to turn away from people. The principle is applied, obviously, to romantic relationships in this book, but I think it applies to all kinds of relationships. Maybe it even applies to strangers. The foundation for a successful, really fulfilling relationship of any kind is to turn toward, turn to. I'm still struggling with that turn to. Turn to people. Because turning away from people, it makes the problem seem like it's easily solved, but you don't really get any resolution, and you have to spend all this time wondering what the other person's thinking. And it doesn't offer you any connection to turn away from people. It doesn't offer you any real connection to turn away. It's hard when you have something to say that you know is going to be difficult for the other person to hear. Maybe it's even going to be hurtful, even if it is necessary. But when you turn away from people, you completely eliminate any chance that there is going to be some resolution. I think that's the mindset when we turn away from people. Like, oh, well, they wouldn't hear me anyway, or they're not going to care anyway, or all these other things. Even if I did turn toward them, it wouldn't make any difference. And that's just an assumption that isn't correct a lot of the time. And even if it is correct, it's like, okay, you turn to somebody, you say what's on your mind, you try to connect with them, it fails. Well, then you're in the same position, actually better than if you just turned away from them in the first place, because you at least have some resolution about what would happen if you said what you wanted to say and did what you wanted to do. And connection is so much more fulfilling when you turn to. It's so much more fulfilling, and I have felt like I almost haven't had a single fulfilling relationship throughout my entire life, up until, like, I don't want to say how recently I'm thinking, because it might not even be accurate, but I've had a few people in my younger years I could honestly say we had a rich connection. And then other than that, it was just me scrambling to get something from people, and then when I didn't get that, or when they didn't know what I wanted, when they didn't fulfill my needs in some way by some standard that I set up for them that was very unfair, I turned away. I turned away, sometimes permanently. And there are some ways that I'm still turning away from people every single day, but I'm at least conscious of it. You know, I'm aware of it. And of course, there's the bigger, cringier, in the grand scope of the world, could we all just turn toward each other? It's way easier said than done. I don't have the specifics of the individual steps, but if we could just have that as a general principle. Can we turn to people instead of away from them? Can we be open to ideas from other people? Can we allow people to explain themselves, to vouch for themselves? Or to vouch for ideas that we don't agree with? Can we listen to those things and actually talk about them? I think that we're moving, and I like to think that we're moving in that direction. I think most of the average population is a lot more reasonable than the internet would lead you to believe, where everything gets so screamy so quickly. But even before this great book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, what really gave me the idea of turning toward and joining the conversation was Kendall Jenner's Pepsi ad.